floor is yours, sir.
Thank you so much. The Kutumba is, as was explained by Ajay and Nagendra, is a social protection system, and it is little bigger than just a family database, as I would explain. Next slide, please. Next slide. Yeah. So, previous slide, please. So, as was explained, the previous slide. As was explained, the Kutumba builds on 44B2 of Aadhaar Act, and thankfully this amendment, which allows for good governance, uh, provides path out of the High Supreme Court order, and I think beyond Section 7, many things are possible. And I really compliment Saurabh, he's there today, the CEO UIDI, and the MATI, the way they have been generous in giving permissions under 44B2. And for the knowledge of the listeners, 44B2 allows you to use Aadhaar for good governance, even if it is not financial delivery, which is anyway enabled under Section 7 of the Aadhaar Act. I would highlight the three red points which I have mentioned here. One, of course, is why is Kutumba required, if you see the last point, to reach poor as per their entitlement, the need. And that basically would mean, can we work on a proactive basis? And instead of asking citizens to get their benefits, can we give it suo motu? Why should citizens come and apply? The second principle, which again becomes very important, is why should I ask the same data again and again? Why can't we have been talking about Estonia principle? Ask data only once. And Kutumba does that. It ensures that no data is sought again, which is there with the government. And lastly, the need score. If you don't have enough money, whom do you give? Do you let the administrators or the other players decide whom to choose? Or can there be a need score which helps to pick up those who are more needy than others? And therefore, you have 100 people. I can give money only to 40 people. Who are those 40 people who are more needy? Can I take out this discretion? If not 100%, can I take it out 60, 70% and give it to more needy? So this is all what Kutumba can do. There are many other things which I have written there and can be read later. I am sure NITI Aayog will circulate this PPT with all others. Next slide, please. Now, Kutumba, and I think Ajay said it fine, and so was Nagendra. Kutumba connects to many databases. So if you see there are about 16 databases which it connects. But that does not mean that you have to connect to these many databases. You can start with even lesser number of databases. Good, better, best cannot fight with each other. Now, some of the states have better databases, so they can connect, but others can even start with a lesser number of databases. But I think Ajay also said very clearly, and I think that was one of the most important points which came out, is that your database will have to be dynamic. It will have to update itself. You cannot depend upon massive surveys which stale out very quickly. You cannot. And then, of course, it has to come from the source system. The source system means that system which is supposed to maintain that data. For example, if you talk about the caste of a person, it has to come from that department who is the source department, namely revenue, for example. So the survey-based systems suffer from those problems. They don't come from the source system, but then sometimes surveys are important to do. But it is important, whichever way you go, is that you dynamically, the database gets updated, as Ajay said, by its use. In Karnataka, of course, thanks to the efforts of many of the officers there, we use the PDS database and then, of course, built on that by adding other databases. So I must say there was no survey work. It was all electronically connecting databases. And I think this is also important to understand. It's not always Aadhaar which allows you to connect. You can connect through any attribute which is common. For example, you are starting with the PDS database. If some other database has, let us say, the PDS ID, that's fine. I mean, you need a key to connect. And therefore, kindly don't get disheartened in some other states if you don't have Aadhaar seeding. Sometimes it can be even transitive in relation. A and B are connected, and B and C are connected, and therefore A and C are connected. So you can find out, you can find out intelligent answers to your problems, and we'll hear some of the cases today. Next slide, please. The Social Registry of Karnataka, this is the output it gives. And you will see that about 80 to 90% of your schemes can be driven by these parameters. For example, PM Kisan can be completely automated using Kutumba. You don't have to ask anybody. You know the land, you know his Aadhaar number, you know the family details, etc. Of course, some exclusion criteria perhaps may require, for example, whether he is a member of a parliament assembly, but that's also very easy to put. After all, those numbers are limited. So you can now, one thing which I would talk about is our deprivation index, which comes out of SCCC, and to tell you that you can actually create these indexes out of the Kutumba type of a system. And I would urge the Government of India to think very seriously about the need or otherwise of massive exercises in the form of SCCC. Next slide. This is the way so-called golden record of a citizen and family would look like. So this is a family record. It is there are personal details, there are family details. So you can see the location. Of course, you can, and Karnataka does have. You have the GPS location of all the 1.75 crore families, but that's not great. I mean, you can always get the coordinates of whenever you do something, go there, you can pick up the coordinate. But see the personal details. So you know the marital status, you know whether he is BPL or not BPL. Next slide. You can also see the family details, which caste, which income, and they are all coming from the live databases, from those department databases who are supposed to maintain the field. So for every field, you have what is called owner department. So for income, you have revenue department. And then similarly for education, you have the education department. A brilliant work was done by Ajay when he was in charge of education. We have in Karnataka a live and bubbling database of education, which has 1.5, 1.4 crore students, including the private colleges, private schools, and government schools. So you get the education details from the education database, and the owner is the education department. The land database comes from the farmer, disability comes from UDID, and so on and so forth. Next slide. The second component, which is very, very important and critical, is the benefit, and I'm talking about the components of social protection system, of which social registry was one of them. The second is the beneficiary registry. Can I give a glimpse of what a family is getting? So that, kindly see in red colors, can I find out those families who have not received benefits although they are entitled? Families who have got too much of benefit, can I do it area-wise, backward areas, forward areas, etc.? And in Karnataka, these are some 10, 12 databases of the benefits which are integrated into the beneficiary registry, including Government of India. So from Narega, for example, the Kutumba's beneficiary registry system can tell you who are the Narega workers who are tribal, who have not been able to grow any crop for various reasons, and have not got enough money under NREGA. And for example, in whose house two or more girl children are studying. So you can make these complex queries and concentrate on a very small subset as per your priorities. Next slide. So kindly have a look. This is the snapshot of a family, the benefits which they have got, and there is nothing exciting about it. It just connects to various databases and it can give you all the benefits which a family has got. There's nothing. I mean, you add it on Aadhaar because you do PFMS or you do Aadhaar-based payment. And then, of course, family as a unit, you can add all the members together and you will get this list. Next slide. Now, this is the third component of social protection. You have a database. A citizen wants to know for which scheme he is entitled. I mean, for this itself, you have middlemen everywhere. Can I key in my Aadhaar number or a family ID and you tell me in the education sectors which schemes I am entitled for? After all, you already have my data. Why should I tell who am I? Why should I explain my profile to you? And therefore, Suvidha helps you to not only find out which schemes you are entitled for, it also helps you to apply for those schemes by either connecting to those systems which are already there or making systems very quickly, the IT system. Suvidha that way is a brilliant system. It feeds into the Kutumba. For example, if there is some field which is not there, it gets that data from the citizen, gets it approved from the owner department and feeds it back to the Kutumba so that next time when the citizen comes, that data is there in the Kutumba database. So I think it's a brilliant example of making scheme discoveries more and more transparent. Next slide, please. These are some of the slides. These are some of the screenshots of Kutumba. Suvidha, I will not go into the details. Next slide. Now, this fourth component is the DBT platform. Thanks to the vision of the government there, for last 5 years, all the payments in Karnataka are Aadhaar-based payments. Now, they of course bring transparency. It goes to the right person. Aadhaar-based means Aadhaar linked database, Aadhaar linked bank account. So you don't really pick up the account number, but you pay it by taking Aadhaar as the financial address. And this in turn helps you to ensure that you have a beneficiary registry because the Aadhaar number is anyway captured for all the payments. Next slide. The last but not the least component of Kutumba is the grievance redressal system. You are excluding people, mind you, and I think this is an extremely important point. You are excluding people. And if you are excluding people on the basis of the data which you have, I think citizens have all rights to complain about the defective data you have. And therefore, there should be an easy mechanism for citizens to see their data and to even raise a grievance against that data. Because this becomes a system in exclusion. And this should never happen. And therefore, a strong grievance redressal system, largely IT driven, so that each and every record is accounted, would go a long way in giving confidence to the people. Next slide, please. What are some of the other features? So, as Ajay was saying somewhere, that you integrate with the attribute source system. Source means caste, income, land, everything, education. So on real-time basis, Nagendra said after some periodic time, Kutumba of course connects on a daily basis. In the evening, it runs a scheduled job and updates attributes. So if somebody has died, next day he will be removed from the pension system. If a child is born, next day the Anganwadi system would come to know, the immunization system would come to know. the ration card system would come to know that a child is born. After all, you have a real-time birth and death register, and you connect to that register. And once that register tells you that a child is born, you then, push that information, broadcast that information to all the consumer department, the consumers of the data within the Kutumba. It enables department to periodically verify the eligibility of the beneficiary. Somebody has sold his land, he should be out of PM Kisan. I must tell you, PM Kisan spends 80,000 crore every year. And I must also tell you that the number of mutations are of the order of 7% every year. Now does that not mean that 7% there is a huge potential or a probability that at least 3 to 4% farmers may be getting out of the system and another 3-4% may be coming into the system. And therefore, PM Kisan cannot afford to be static. A Kutumba type of a system, if it can bring 4% saving, can perhaps serve the whole of government to even create this system. And I would request Ajay to kindly have a look at this, kindly see if some directions can be given, that the saving from even one scheme like PM Kisan can be enough for kind of supporting the states in building their systems. I must, however, hasten to add that the whole of Kutumba did not even take 10 crore rupees in Karnataka. You don't really require those 3,000 crore, but just in case you need, there is enough saving. The scheme also, Kutumba also enables you to remove deceased beneficiaries, and I spoke about it. You don't have to do what is called annual life certification. Why should you do that? Why should you even ask citizens to do a life verification? You have a good death and birth system. And if that death birth system can talk to Kutumba, I think that liability or you pushing that liability onto the top of the citizen by way of annual life certification can of course come out. And I must congratulate Saurabh. Saurabh has worked wonderfully well. He has brought up what is called facial authentication. So now Aadhaar can actually use facial authentication with AIML big data and can on any mobile which is owned by you, you can actually do a facial authentication. That way, the live certification becomes much easier in coming days, I'm sure. Next slide. This would be a music to many ministries in Government of India that the SECC survey used to bring out the deprivation indexes for the families. And I must tell you that Karnataka is able to calculate all the 7 deprivation indexes and that too dynamically. And now that's a very good news that what SECC was bringing out by way of a survey in 2011 and publishing the data in 2015, which unfortunately remains stale for a long time, can now perhaps piggyback on a system like Kutumba, where you have deprivation indexes getting updated on a daily basis. Next slide. So these are the 7 deprivation indexes. Household with only one room, kacha wall and kacha roof. Female has had household with no adult male member in age group. SC/ST households, households with disabled members and no able body members. And I have shown as to which fields from Kutumba can help you to create these deprivation indexes dynamically on a daily basis. Next slide. And I here in the next slide, I show you 6 families. In fact, it's available for all, but I didn't want to take space in showing this. You can see the 5th row in this. And you will see here is a family. The family ID is given on the left. And this family is suffering on all the 7 indexes. The family has only women in the house, they are SC/ST, they have no able family member, they have kacha household, etc. Now, this type of a SECC indexes, but not coming out of SEC, deprivation indexes can go a long way in prioritizing which families you want to give benefits before you give the other, and of course, getting dynamically updated on a daily basis. Next slide. So I now come to some of the benefits of Kutumba, and I will take another perhaps 10 minutes to close this. It has improved users' experience. So the government order says you shall not ask for any document from citizens. You shall not. Only the ID of the person, and wherever required, authentication through biometrics, etc., to say that you are one who you are claiming to be. And then, of course, the whole data gets fetched from Kutumba. So nil or lower document submission. In fact, this was one of the reasons for Seva Sindhu to get the Prime Minister award this year, that the Seva Sindhu, which is a service delivery for about 800 services in Karnataka, piggybacks on Kutumba and makes the document submission as nil in most of the cases, not in all cases, of course. And therefore, now the Kutumba is being used by all the departments, and they don't seek any papers from the citizens. Now, the Kutumba, kindly see the point number 2.2, and that's very, very important. Citizen self-service portal. And I think Nagendra spoke about it. Citizens have a right to see their data. They have a right to even ask for a change. I mean, change, of course, if it is allowed. For example, you can't ask for a change in your car. I mean, that's not in your hand, but things like, for example, your marital status. Certain data which we are not aware can be asked for changing, or you can even self-register your new families in Kutumba. I must hasten to add here that Kutumba only has about 82% of the families in Karnataka. The 18% families which are actually APL families, people who are rich, are not there. Now it depends upon the administrative and political will of the government in Karnataka as to how they, make Kutumba more compulsory, so that these 18% people can also perhaps become part of the database. There can be a counter thinking also. When you're not giving them any benefits, why should you even ask them to come into the database? But that's a thinking. You can see it either way. Next slide. Now, this is the self-service portal. You can see your family details, who are the adults, who are the minors, who is the head of the family, what is the date of birth, etc. Whatever is there in Kutumba. Next slide. You can even edit some of the information which is your information. For example, date of birth. You can update date of birth, but that's only a request, and you upload the relevant documents, and somebody at the back end. Why update? Because we do not have Aadhaar linked a birth system. We thanks to METI and thanks to Union Home Secretary, that Karnataka, and I think that's not a very good news, that Karnataka is the only state which has permission for using Aadhaar for birth and death systems. I request CEO UIDI and others and colleagues in NITI Aayog that we should now open up death and birth with Aadhaar. I don't think that we should be conservative. Karnataka's experience has shown that it doesn't trouble everybody, and it only helps. Now, because earlier to 1 year we did not have Aadhaar, and therefore date of birth is not known to us, you can upload your certificate therefore, and we can update in case the Aadhaar date of birth is not the correct date of birth. Next slide. Similarly, you have family details here, your caste, income, whatever, and then some other details which you can see here, your ID, your pension ID, your HRMS ID, your disability ID, etc. Next slide. And finally, your address, and then the benefits which you have received from the government. Because these benefits which are coming from the beneficiary registry can actually disable you from getting more benefits, because you have already got more. So you can comment if this benefit was not gotten by you, but it's shown wrongly here. Next slide. So how has Kutumba helped government? Of course, it helps government. The drudgery of work is reduced. the government does not have to verify any documents. Whichever field is coming from Kutumba is colored green through a tick, the way you see in your Twitter, etc., as a verified data, and the department knows that these fields are coming from Kutumba, and therefore there is no challenge. So certificate requirement goes down, and the responsive and dynamic inclusion into beneficiaries, citizens do not have to apply. And I'm very happy to tell you that there are two schemes in Karnataka which are now proactive, that is Suomoto, and that's very exciting news for Karnataka. The old age pension is now Suomoto. That means that citizens don't have to apply, it is our job. So the Kutumba on a monthly basis creates potential list of eligible beneficiaries, and so does it about excluding the people who are dead. And similarly, the scholarship has become, Suomoto. The Kisan scholarship, the students belonging to farmers' family scholarship this year, which is only in Karnataka this year, was started by the present Chief Minister, was completely on a proactive Suomoto identification basis because they had all the data. I think more than the data, you need policies. You need policies that, there's a fear that expenditure may go up. Why should expenditure go up? You can apply need score. You can do Suomoto identification, apply need score, give it to more needies. The experience has been that those who are more needy are actually not able to apply because of ignorance. So the people who are left out in the application-based system are those who actually need it more. Next slide. So this is just one example. The Government of India pre-matric scholarship to minorities. You need 5 certificates now. Amazing how difficult it is for the citizen. In Karnataka, you need nothing. Must be between class 1 to 12, the education database tells. Must belong to minorities, the caste certificate tells. Must have annual income less than 1 lakh, the income database tells. 2 students in family, the family database tells. Must have achieved grade B or above, the education database tells. So just give your family ID and there ends the matter. You don't really need to apply. The question is, why should he even give family ID? Because you expect him to apply. I mean, why should he apply? Somebody should think about it. So you still want him to give his family ID and say, I want scholarship. I don't know why should he not want scholarship. So this can again be Suomoto enabled. People like Ajay Seth would perhaps play a very active role in facilitating, at least in some areas like education, a Suomoto delivery of services. Next slide. So this is the likely inclusion list of the old age pension. You can kindly see the data. Next slide. Now, how has this inclusion list helped? The coverage of beneficiaries have been more. The Suomoto scholarship from 4.4 lakh, 4.4 lakh and 1 lakh eligible students or construction workers were given Suomoto scholarship. Post-matric scholarship increased from 4 lakh to 9 lakh. The social security pensions has become automatic. And of course, crop loss payment to about 10 lakh farmers in COVID was all Suomoto. And instantly, thanks to Aadhaar, the Aadhaar itself becomes the financial address, and you don't have to run after citizens giving their bank account number. Next slide. While you help to do Suomoto, you also remove deceased and ineligible beneficiaries. So 3 lakh ineligible beneficiaries were removed from the ration card thanks to the HRMS system, thanks to the income tax department, thanks to the GSTN network. We were able to remove those people who were otherwise ineligible. We were able to remove people from social security because they were having land and therefore were not supposed to get social security pension. Deceased people were removed thanks to the birth and death system, which is now dynamic in nature and is connected to Kutumba through Aadhaar under 44B2. I think in Karnataka, we got about 12 databases enabled under Aadhaar 44B2, and I must say UIDAI has been very graceful and very supportive in giving permissions under 44B2. Next slide. This is the likely exclusion list. It can actually help you to plan. If you want to, let's say you have income limit as 32,000 and you want to increase it. Now the machine can actually tell you how many people will come into the system. You don't have to make guesses. Your planning can be as per your funding. You can actually plan at a much granular model. Next slide. Integration with GOI portals. It was a music to my ear when Nagendra said that he would be much more proactive on sharing data with states. After Nagendra has come, it has become little less difficult, although it is still difficult. Nagendra is trying very hard, and I'm sure Nagendra would find out a way to see that the databases can be shared. Ajay was very correct when he said it's just that it is lying with Government of India, but the data entry and the data all belong to state governments. E-Shrama is another database, UDID, RCH. All this will go to RCH is so important that if Kutumba connects to RCH, I can tell you who are the people who are born. RCH will tell me who is born. I can tell RCH who are born in case the delivery is not in the hospital. And then, of course, their immunization, etc., all becomes very easy. Next slide. This is just RCH integration with the Kutumba. Next slide. So Kutumba is marching forward. It is compliance to the Personal Data Protection Bill and privacy by design policy. I mean, there are many things which I will not like to explain here, but I would be very happy to share those documents. Selected schemes to be taken up on entitlement basis. I think the budget says that. And connecting, we are trying to connect with UID to get Aadhaar of a birth EID to automatically include new birth. Today, we are not able to get the Aadhaar back after Aadhaar is generated for a given EID. Maybe Saurabh will touch on that. Next slide. So I am now about to close and just to tell you that for family database, form a family database by connecting attributes to PDS. Kindly don't worry about how many databases are ready, but use those databases which are, as Ajay said, which are used on a daily system, which are live, which are authentic. Please go as much as required under 44B2. I would be more than happy to provide you those 44B2 proposals which I have sent to Government of India. In any case, NITI Aayog has been kind enough to give me a tag of senior fellow, and it's my responsibility now, my liability to help you. And if you want any help on this 44B2, I can give you those things. Resort to field survey only if it is inevitable, because that is one-time data, it is very difficult, it is not coming from a source system. I think Saurabh should help us to get permissions under 44B2 for birth and death system across the country. And then, of course, please create beneficiary registry. It is very easy to create. And it tells you if somebody is hogging all the benefits, are there some families which are left out of benefit? And it's very easy to do. Thanks to the DBT mission, we have large number of DBT programs, more schemes are going through DBT, and therefore collating the data should not be a big problem. Even PFMS recent order by Finance Ministry would also, on a central response scheme, will help you to create these beneficiary registry. But Ajay, I think it is important to formalize that the data sharing should become much more easy, and I would request Bonu to kind of formally write to all that there should be a data sharing, including PFMS, so that the benefits registry can be formed. Next slide. So thanks a lot. Thanks a lot.